Chapter 26, My School Years. When I look back on my school days, it seems that the time passed so quickly, yet the summer days seem to last forever between school years. My earliest memories of school started with those times waiting for and riding the school bus to school in the little town of St. Ignatius. There was a small sloped incline on the road that was just before turning right and continuing to the next stop, which was the Rose Lips Home and Dairy. Our bus driver, Alfred Hilton, stopped each time on that exact spot to pick us up. It was always a rush to be out there to the stop before the bus arrived because we had morning chores to complete, such as feeding calves and helping with the morning milking. In those early years, there was always one of us three older boys, Gar, David, and me, that helped Dad with the morning milking. My brother John was much younger than me, and I don't remember much of his school years. Once on the bus, it was about a 30-minute ride, stopping to pick up other farm kids before arriving at the school. We mostly sat with those friends we had that were also farm kids. I usually sat in the back with the Roselips, Max Leishman, Alan Mickelson, and Wayne Strong. As we aged into our teenage years, one by one we began to drive ourselves to school. I remember Dave and I bought an old Rambler that we began using to drive to school. It gave us another 15 minutes to be ready before leaving for school. On my very first day of school, the bus picked Dave and I up at the usual bus stop at by our house. My brother David was then starting the second grade. It was all such a new experience for me, and I looked forward to the bus ride more than school itself. As I walked up the steps of the bus, the first thing I saw was our driver, Alfred Hilton. Little did I know at the time how many memories he would create for me over the next 9 years of my life. They would be fun memories for me, but not so fun for him. I soon learned that he was generally not a happy person, and kids were viewed as trouble about to happen. I rode the school bus every school year until David and I got the Rambler. From our house, the bus headed south toward the Mission Dam Road, stopping after 3/4 of a mile to pick up the Roselips. What a cool name, Roselips. It turned right at the Mission Dam Road, heading west 1 mile, then turned right again to pick up the Mickelson kids. From there were a couple more stops before we arrived at the school bus stop in St. Ignatius. This is the bus route that we had during our school years. There were 4 additional buses that went different routes to pick up all the country kids. On that first day, I was directed into Mrs. Crean's classroom. Everything seemed in confusion as they were shuffling kids back and forth. In the end, I was taken across the hall to Mrs. Kennedy's classroom. She was very pretty and proper. I remember being happy that I was in her class for the year. I told my brother Gar that he needed to tell them next year that he wanted Mrs. Kennedy's class, which he did, but in the end was in Mrs. Crean's class. This is I'm going to show a picture. It says, my first grade picture in Mrs. Kennedy's class. Wayne Strong is right in front of me, and another friend, Lloyd, is 4th from the right on the middle row. That's a classic picture. For lunch, we lined up and marched into the lunchroom. The teacher held on to our lunch tickets, which were long white cardboard slips that had perforated tear-off tickets for each lunch. The food was okay, but certainly not like Mom's. It was about the 8th grade when we were allowed to walk down the street to the malt shop and buy our own lunch of choice. I remember how I always crossed the street over to Dubé's Ranch Market to buy penny candy. There was this 5-shelf stand that had containers of penny candy in different cardboard boxes. The cashier patiently stood there while we picked out candy, 1 piece at a time, and set it on the counter. It took 10 minutes to pick out 10 pieces of candy and then hand her 10 pennies. Then she opened the cash register, dropped the coins in 1 at a time, counting each one. I remember it like yesterday. Yep, they even had candy cigarettes. They had candy cigarettes when I was a kid. The grade school years flew by quickly, and before I knew it, I was in the 8th grade and then a freshman in high school. My favorite class was study hall, as it was called. A couple of the seniors during one class time opened one of the windows while the teacher was out and shoved me out onto the ground. When I went back into the school and returned to study hall, the teacher wanted to know why I had snuck out of class while she was gone. I told her that I hadn't, and that I had been lifted up and shoved out the window by Robert Krantz. She said I was lying to her and marked my grade down. This was the beginning of 4 more years of this to come. All my classes were very boring to me. I also went through a period when I could not focus on anything much in school. To this day, I'm not sure why. I loved to play basketball, and in shop class I built first one and then another backboard, just like the ones in the gym with the black squares above the rims. I hung them in the top floor of the barn across the road from our house. This barn belonged to Ray Simmons, and he gave me permission, maybe it's Simon's, he gave me permission to hang them there at both ends of the barn. I strung lights above the backboards, giving myself a full-court basketball gym. I can't tell you the number of hours that I played ball up in that barn, sometimes by myself and many, many hours with my friends. Because we had no gym at the ward house, the barn became our practice gym for our church ball team. High school was very hard for me for many reasons. I was told that I was not college material, so it seemed like a waste of time most of the time. It became more of a social event each day. I had 30 days of school left in my senior year when I walked into our principal's office and told Mr. Olson that I was quitting school. He tried to talk me out of it. I had my graduation gown ordered and fulfilled all the academic requirements. My dad asked me what I was going to do, which I replied, "Work for you." He didn't say much, other than trying to change my mind. I worked for Dad all summer, during that which time I decided that I had made a stupid decision to quit school and decided to go back and finish. The next school year I continued to work for Dad and go to school for 1.5 hours a day to finally graduate. So here's a few pictures. The first is the barn where I spent many hours playing basketball. The backboard's still visible, and the one below it says, "Waste time, inattentive, and annoys others. LOL," which is his report card. So, barn and report card. Then the final picture there, high school graduation in 1971. That's a great picture.